time to start, and welcome back everybody to the last day of our nice workshop on topological aspects of strong correlations and gauge theories. So today we have, well, the usual format. We have again 2 sessions with 2 talks each. So our first speaker today will be Indrakshi Raichoduri, who very recently, as I heard, moved from Maryland to Goa, and she'll be telling us about efforts of quantum simulations of non-abelian gauge theories. So you have about 50 minutes to speak. As usual, short questions can be taken at any time during the talk. Longer questions we should take towards the end, and I'll give you something like a 5-minute warning. So please take it away.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank ICTS DIFR for organizing this program, and also the organizers for inviting me to this. So today I'll be talking about the efforts towards the quantum simulation of specifically non-abelian gauge theories. Yesterday we heard from Yuta about the same towards some abelian gauge theories, namely Schwinger model. Is there any noise?
I'll check what's going on with the people. Please continue.
Okay. So to talk about the background towards this effort, the physics problem that we are interested in is the theory of quantum chromodynamics that basically describes one of the 4 fundamental interactions of nature, the strong interaction. The lattice QCD program or lattice approach to quantum chromodynamics has been a very successful program that has used the classical computation resources at its fullest extent and has been extensively studied over past 4 to 5 decades. However, there is certain roadblocks towards this conventional lattice QCD program, specifically due to some problem in the computational techniques itself, that is the infamous sign problem. And hence, it might be important or interesting to explore drastically new different computational methods to study the same problem, which may not have that particular difficulty. In this regard, the quantum simulation or quantum computation of lattice QCD offers hope to go beyond the capability of the conventional lattice QCD program. And presently, we are witnessing a change of paradigm as we are entering into quantum computation era from the classical computation era. So what's the role of us, the physicists, at this point? Our role is particularly to identify the physics problem that would actually gain from the upcoming quantum computers. And then it's important to work towards developing a quantum algorithm for the problem that I'm interested in. At least until the universal quantum computer is actually available, it is important to construct or propose or perform experiments for analog quantum simulators. Those are very problem specific. So for the particular problem that one is interested in, one should also start looking forward towards building the analog quantum simulators. Now, this particular set of job for a lattice gauge theorist is particularly difficult because the lattice gauge theory computations in the classical computation era and the quantum computation era requires completely different theoretical framework. The earlier one was the path integral approach or the Lagrangian formalism, whereas for the quantum computing of lattice QCD would require a Hamiltonian formalism. They address different objectives. So directly, there is no competition between the classical computing and the quantum computing for lattice QCD. They are kind of complementary to each other. And the computational methods and algorithms are entirely different in these 2 regimes. So we have a lot to do at this present moment. So as I mentioned, the goal of this program is ultimately perform the lattice QCD calculations using quantum computers. But QCD is a gauge theory with gauge group SU3 in 3+1 dimensions. And depending on the present status of quantum, on the development of quantum algorithm and quantum hardware, this might be too complicated something to start with. That is why people have actually found it important to work with similar yet simpler theories, such as the U1 gauge theory, or that is quantum electrodynamics. Specifically, the QED in 1+1 dimension, that is known as Schwinger model, has provided a very good test bed for the novel quantum algorithms and quantum simulation proposals. And this has been actually most popular over mostly from last 8 to 10 years. There has been more than hundreds of papers. This is just a very small list of them, where the efforts are given towards performing quantum computation for Schwinger model. And actually, we have heard a lot from yesterday's talk by Yuta as well. Most importantly, there has been actual experimental demonstration for quantum simulating a Schwinger model in recent years. These are the three experimental efforts that has been reported. Another candidate for such simpler theories is like working with discrete gauge groups, discrete abelian gauge groups, such as ZN gauge theory or Z2 gauge theory. There has also been a direct experimental demonstration for these two cases in these two experiments reported here. However, to address the actual theory of QCD, one must need to consider non-abelian gauge theories, and we all know that abelian gauge theories and non-abelian gauge theories are quite complicated, starting from abelian gauge theories. So the simplest non-abelian gauge theory that one can think of is the SU2 gauge theory that actually captures all the non-trivialities of QCD, but is a little bit simpler. So let's concentrate on this. Now, if we look at the state of the art or towards quantum simulating or performing quantum computation for SU2 gauge theory, we see in the literature that in the past, that is in the first half of the last decade, there has been several analog simulation proposals for the same, but none of them has been experimentally demonstrated yet. And there has been a recent proposal by collaborator and me. This is an analog simulation proposal. And also there has been a few digital implementations or digital demonstration for SU2 gauge theory on a quantum hardware very recently. Even though all these works are here, if we look at the number of papers in the archive towards this direction, we'll see that there are actually not too many efforts. Now the question is, why is it so? To understand that, we may look into the framework that one needs to consider while doing the quantum computation for gauge theories. One needs a Hamiltonian formulation. Of course, the Hamiltonian formulation of gauge theory was already there in the literature right after Wilson proposed the lattice gauge theory back in 1975 by Kogut and Susskind. So let's have a look at what this Hamiltonian formulation consists of.
Poi a questo punto, se
So the Hamiltonian formalism of lattice gauge theory is on a discretized spatial lattice, and the time remain continuous. The Hamiltonian is given here. This Hamiltonian has different terms. It has one electric term that for non-abelian gauge theory becomes color electric field term. There is a mass term for the fermions. Here I have considered staggered fermions, so this is the staggered mass term. There is a matter gauge interaction part of the Hamiltonian, and there is a magnetic part of the Hamiltonian from pure gauge part that contains the trace placket. So for this Hamiltonian, the canonical conjugate variables of the theory are the electric field residing at left and right end of one particular link of the lattice, and the link operator or holonomy that sits on the link that satisfies this canonical commutation relations for the system. Now, the Placket operator is basically the smallest possible closed loop, that is the gauge invariant object that one can construct on the lattice, that is a product of 4 link operators at the 4 different sites around the placket and taking the trace. Now, being a gauge theory, the most important part of the theory is the Gauss-Law constraint. That is a local constraint that sits at one particular lattice, at each of the lattice sites, and where the physical states at each lattice site must be annihilated by the Gauss-Law constraint, where the Gauss-Law constraint is kind of considers the imbalance between the incoming and outgoing electric fields on that site by the matter content. The most convenient basis to work with this formalism is the strong coupling basis, where the strong coupling vacuum is defined that a state that is annihilated by the electric part of the Hamiltonian and also the mass part. The minimal of the mass part. And the strong coupling basis is constructed by action of this link operator on this strong coupling vacuum. Now, this particular framework is quite easy to handle for U1 gauge theory because the link operator of the holonomy there just becomes a phase. However, yes, and this U1 theories become more simple if you are in 1 plus 1 dimension, because in 1 dimension, this Placket term doesn't occur because your lattice is spatial lattice is 1 dimensions. So your Hamiltonian consists of only electric term, mass term, and this matter gauge interaction term. So the most complicated term of the Hamiltonian gets dropped and life becomes simple. However, for SU2 gauge theory or any non-abelian gauge theory, things become complicated because now instead of having one particular electric field, it carries one color index A, and depending on the gauge group, like for SU2, you have 3 colored electric fields. The link operator is now a group valued operator, which is in fundamental representation of SU2 becomes a 2 by 2 matrix. The matter content has also has color components. For SU2, it has 2 components. And most importantly, the Gauss law, which was stated here, now becomes more than 1 constraints, and those constraints do not commute among themselves. So it is not trivial to find simultaneous solutions of all the Gauss law constraints at each of the lattice sites. Things become more complicated when one considers QCD or SU3, because this A index for SU3 then runs from 1 to 8. So we need to focus on this particular framework, and the aim is to quantum simulate this particular Hamiltonian. So let me look into detail the efforts that I described in brief in the earlier. Let me detail how one approached into how this group of physicists throughout the globe approached towards this particular problem. The earliest efforts started from the Erez Zohar and collaborators, where they have proposed a cold atom quantum simulator for SO2 Yang-Mills theory back in 2013, 2016 in this period. And what they consider an optical lattice that has potential, optical lattice potential that has the minima. Basically, the content of the theory is of 2 types. The gauge field is a bosonic variable and the matter field is a fermionic variable. So they propose to simulate the lattice gauge theory Hamiltonian in terms of mixture of bosons and fermions, where bosons are trapped in a potential that has a minima along the link or at the middle of the link, or the fermions are trapped at each of the lattice sites. Now, when one constructs this kind of quantum simulator, the most difficult job is to impose the gauge invariance, because gauge invariance doesn't come naturally or is not there in the atomic system or the simulating system that one is considering. In this particular case, they made a very clever choice of imposing gauge invariance, mapping the gauge invariance naturally to the conservation of angular momentum in any scattering event of that lattice. So that was inbuilt there. Now, the most complicated term of the Hamiltonian is as I mentioned, that's the Placket term. So to get the placket term, they propose to put another extra auxiliary fermion at each of the link, and that auxiliary fermions hops around one particular placket, and in the fourth order effective Hamiltonian, one could recover the placket interaction. This proposal has not been experimentally demonstrated yet, because you can see that the placket interaction is already becoming too weak, because it's obtained in the fourth order perturbation theory. So if we move forward, there were other proposals as well. There were a continuous efforts towards quantum simulation of gauge theories using the quantum link model. Now, quantum link model, I'm not going to much detail, but just mention that quantum link model is a gauge theory that has finite dimensional Hilbert space. So the gauge degrees of freedom are not bosonic anymore. They don't have the infinite Hilbert space, but the gauge degrees of freedom are also fermionic, and the matter is also fermionic. So there has been a very good proposal for quantum simulating this quantum link model for UN and SUN gauge theories in general. And but the thing is that this proposal has also not been implemented over so this is a proposal from 2013. So over past 8 years, this has not been implemented yet. Actually, I have personally heard from one of the authors of this paper that this proposal is maybe linked to some kind of science fiction even at this moment after 8 years. So there people are really struggling to find a concrete quantum simulation proposal for gauge theories. There has been other efforts as well from another work. They dealt with the SU2 gauge theory. They tried to implement gauge symmetry, and then the most concern was there was some term they considered some effective theory that preserves gauge symmetry, but there are other interaction or other scattering events occurring in the atomic system that is actually violating the gauge invariance or taking one away from gauge symmetry. So they propose in this work, like they propose some gauge protection scheme and to remain within the gauge invariant Hilbert space, or calculated how much is it effective or not. Also, they studied the scaling of the lattice, everything they calculated with the effect of that, with the scaling and imperfections of a probable experiment. I quickly mentioned that there were other efforts. Of the previous works that I mentioned, those were depending on the platform of ultra-cold atoms trapped in optical lattices. There were also some efforts where one uses the architecture of a superconducting circuit in past this is also a proposal. They propose a good valid superconducting architecture or superconducting circuit, but the resource that required is too high for the present available compared to the present available resources. However, they consider a very simple system. They consider a triangular lattice with periodic boundary condition in 1 dimensions. So this is the architecture. This is the lattice configurations that they are considering it. However, this is a valid a proposal for quantum simulating SU2 gauge theory on quantum circuits. There were other proposals as well that uses Rydberg atoms, but none of this has been experimentally implemented and still remain as some very preliminary proposals. Now the question is, why is it so? And is there any way out to get some practically to move towards some practically realizable quantum simulation proposals that one can immediately do? So from this query, in recent years, we thought of exploring all possible formalisms of Hamiltonian lattice gauge theory that is available in the literature and see if there is a preferred candidate that can be more useful from the perspective of Hamiltonian simulation. So as the first step of that, we just considered SU2 gauge theory coupled with staggered fermions in simple 1+1 dimensions. And we worked with we solved a Gauss-Law constraint exactly and obtained, since this is a SU2 gauge theory, we could come up with a minimal angular momentum basis. However, this solving Gauss law is a tedious task. And however, one can do that. And that this although this is a complicated step, a non-trivial step. Also, if you are particularly working in 1+1 dimensions, you can actually perform a complete gauge fixing, and you can end up with a purely fermionic formalism that has no bosonic degrees of freedom. However, that is very limited. That is only valid in 1+1 dimensions with one particular boundary condition, that is the open or fixed boundary condition. In another recent work by Eres-Zohar and collaborators, they have proposed a purely bosonic formalism where, using the Gauss law, you can actually remove fermions from your theory and end up with a purely bosonic theory. And also there is another form of formalism available in the literature, that is the prepotential formalism that I'll come into in a few minutes, that leads to a new formalism called as loop string hadron formalism of the literature. There is also the quantum link model formalism that I mentioned earlier, but I'll not be talking about quantum link model here because we considered only those Hamiltonians that provide the same spectra. For quantum link model, it's the spectrum that one obtains with the quantum link model Hamiltonian for SU2, even with the matching the coupling constant and so on, they're entirely different. So that is not exactly the same theory that we want to look into. So what is this loop string hadron formalism that we find has some benefit over others? The loop string hadron formalism is actually based on the prepotential formulation of gauge theory that has been developed starting from 2005 by Manu Mathur, Rameshani Shetty, me, and other collaborators. So this actually provides a reformulation of the original Kogut-Susskind Hamiltonian in terms of Schwinger bosons. And this is a valid, this formulation exists for gauge groups SU2, SU3, as well as arbitrary SUN and for any dimension. The main feature of this formalism is it is gauge invariant formalism, and it takes care of the proliferation of the loop degrees of freedom as well. And so eventually it describes dynamics of only the physical degrees of freedom. Now, this prepotential formulation of gauge theories has been kind of made complete by coupling it to staggered matter in collaboration with Jesse Stryker, who was a grad student then at IMT. And that leads to the loop string hadron formulation that is known as LSH formalism. I may mention as LSH from now on. Okay. And the simplest case of LSH formalism that one can consider is SU2 gauge theory in 1+1 or 2+1 dimensions. So this is the work. This is published in 2020, this LSH formalism. So let's look what are the key ingredients of the LSH formalism. The key ingredients are, number one, the loop string hadron formalism is a manifestly gauge invariant formalism. So what it gives, what are the gauge invariant for quant observables on for a lattice gauge theory? Those are the Wilson loops, strings, hadrons, those. Now, what this LSH formalism gives us is a local snapshot of all of these variables and glue those by an abelian Gauss law or some constraint along the link. So, for example, so there are basically two ingredients. You have a local SU2 invariant Hilbert space, and you have some constraints on each of the links. Those are abelian constraints. Let's look at an example for that. Okay. For example, consider a system of one dimension, a one-dimensional lattice. What are the gauge invariant excitations that you can think of a one-dimensional lattice? That can be a hadron for SU2, that can be a hadron, a meson sitting at one particular site, or that can be a string that starts from a matter and ends from an antimatter. Now, these are the if this is a lattice, these blue ones are the lattice sites, and this particular state, say this first state, this can be thought of as a global SU2 invariant state on your lattice. Now, if you look at locally at this picture, let's say you look at one particular site, at one particular site, like this site n equal to 3, this state is characterized by 3 quantum numbers, NL, NI, NO. NL gives the number of fluxes that flows across this site. Basically, here you can see that here you see 2 gray lines passing through this site n equal to 3. So here the NL quantum number is 2. There is no incoming string at this site. So incoming string quantum number is Ni, that is 0. And there is one outgoing string quantum number, that is 1. So the local state here is characterized by just these three integers. Now note that this Ni and No, these two quantum numbers contain some matter or antimatter. So these are fermionic degrees of freedom, kind of fermionic degrees of freedom. So they can take values at most 0 or 1. For example, if you look at this particular state where you have a singlet constructed only out of fermions sitting at one side, here your NL value is 0, however, Ni is 1 and No is 1. Now, these are the local states that those are characterized by this NL, Ni, No, these 3 quantum numbers per lattice site. Now, how is that the global picture is obtained? The global picture is obtained by imposing an abelian constraint along each of the link. The abelian constraint actually gives you the continuity of this flux line across the middle of the link, namely across this one of these dotted vertical slices. So you'd see that any of this picture of any of these sample states, the flux flows continuously at any of these vertical dotted lines. That means these states are characterized by this local set of quantum numbers at each lattice site, and they satisfy the abelian Gauss-Law constraint. So with this state, what are the exact benefits of this state over using the conventional, say, angular momentum states for SU2 gauge theory, even in 1+1 dimension? First of all, the thing that in this picture, you see this excitation here that is characterized by this NO quantum number to be 1, or that one to be the Ni quantum number to be 1. These are gauge invariant excitations. So a state given by this NL, Ni, No quantum number like this already satisfies the Gauss-Law constraint. This is annihilated by the Gauss-Law operator. And you can still construct the same thing in terms of angular momentum variables, angular momentum basis. But then what becomes is a physical state constructed out of angular momentum basis is a sum of many different angular momentum states coupled to corresponding Clebsch-Gordon coefficients and all. In turn, the same thing that is the number of terms terms in the linear combination for a particular state actually grows exponentially when you increase your lattice size or you increase your cutoff of the system. In this regard, the loop string hadron basis that can be said one sparse. So that affects the computational cost in great extent. On top of that, you don't need to pay any computational cost to spend any computational expenditure on solving the Gauss-Law constraint. The basis is already solved with the Gauss-Law constraint. Just you fix a set of integers at each lattice site and you check whether this local integer is satisfying the abelian constraint along the link or not. If it is okay, then you have a physical configuration on your lattice. That is the gauge invariant configuration. Now, in turn, what it happens that using this loop string hadron actually saves the cost of any Hamiltonian simulation. This is the cost of an exact diagonalization on classical computer to a great extent. And this LSH cost is almost comparable to the fermionic cost. The fermionic formalism that I mentioned, that only in one dimension and with particular boundary condition, one can end up with a purely fermionic formalism, where that is the simplest thing to do, but that that is very limited to dimension and boundary conditions. However, this loop string hadron is most general. One can do it, one can perform, or one can formulate the theory in loop string hadron for any dimension with any boundary condition, and hopefully for any gauge group as well. Okay, so as I mentioned, this local loop string, local SU2 invariant Hilbert space or LSH Hilbert space in one dimension is characterized by these three quantum numbers, and for higher dimension, these are basically characterized by these three quantum numbers. Those are additionally three quantum numbers. Those are pure loop fluxes, because there will be the kind of plaquette terms on the lattice as well that has, where the loop flows from one direction to another direction on the lattice, and those are captured by these loop quantum numbers. Now, the abelian Gauss law constraint that I was talking about that exists on each of the link, these are some linear relations. Okay, no, okay, I missed this. Now, from this set of labeling of a loop state or set of quantum numbers, I have already mentioned that this Ni and No, those are fermionic in nature. So those can take values only between 0 and 1. However, this NL and for higher dimensions, this loop quantum numbers, else, those are bosonic quantum number. You can have any winding of loops or any amount of flux flowing across each lattice. So these values, these are actually integers starting from 0 to infinity, but for any practical calculation, one must impose the cutoff on these bosonic quantum numbers and end up with a finite dimensional Hilbert space. And one can check the cutoff effect or the effect of this finite cut on your lattice through numerically or other way. Okay, now coming back to the abelian Gauss law constraint that I was talking about, the abelian Gauss law constraint is of the same form in any dimension. That is another very important feature of this formalism. Like when you are, this abelian constraint is always on one particular link. So this is equivalent to an abelian constraint, say for the Gauss law constraint for the Schwinger model, that is only in 1+1 dimension. You may think of Gauss law constraint for the abelian gauge theory on a higher dimensional lattice. There you will have like a cut of two directions, and there will be fluxes, electric fields along all four directions, and you will have to make the gauge, impose the gauge invariance out of all those four electric fields. But here it is always along the link. So it is always a one-dimensional Gauss law constraint. And this is actually algebraic relation between these loop and loop string hadron variables. And these are the, I'm not going into detail of this thing, but this, what this does is it provides the continuity of the loops or the continuity of flux along the different neighboring lattice sites. Okay, and this is the example that I have shown is only for d equal to 2. I'm not going into detail, but higher dimension, this generalization is pretty straightforward. So now if we want to digitize the loop string hadron Hilbert space, this also becomes quite straightforward, because now we have the local loop Hilbert space or local loop string hadron Hilbert space characterized by a set of integers. Now just expressing each of these integers in a binary basis gives you the digitization scheme as shown here. Now in this work, the collaborator and I, we have actually found a digital circuit solution for the abelian Gauss law constraint that actually remains as the only complications for the loop string hadron formulation. And as I mentioned, this abelian Gauss law constraint actually, okay, I'll come to it later. And in this paper, we have also calculated the qubit cost and for different formalisms for different bases. And we have seen that the loop string hadron basis, where all the abelian constraints are exactly solved, those are the cheapest options for any dimensions, even for higher dimensions, say spatial dimension 2 or spatial dimension 3. However, even if we don't solve all of those abelian constraints exactly, still the cost of loop string hadron formalism is comparable to the other formalism. However, this has much more advantages, because as I mentioned, that these states become one sparse. That has an extreme advantage for having any Hamiltonian simulation, be classical or even quantum. Now, coming back to the oracles that we provide to solve the abelian Gauss-Lie constraint, this is the quantum circuit. I will not go into detail of the architecture, but just looking at this picture, this is the oracle presented for one dimension, and these are the oracles constructed for higher dimension. Just looking at the architecture, you should be able to appreciate that this architecture remains very same. So within the working with the LSH formalism, going to higher dimension may require more resources, but the basic architecture won't change at all. Whatever you construct for the lower dimension will remain useful for any higher dimension as well. That is a very good advantage of working with loop string hadron formalism. And their complications are always at the level of a one-dimensional constraint. So the one-dimensional constraint is straightforwardly generalized or used in higher dimensions as well. Okay, now coming back to moving a track a bit and coming back to analog quantum simulation, I talked about many analog simulation proposals that exist in the literature from the first half of the last decade. We have also proposed a recent analog simulation proposal that is based on this loop string hadron dynamics. And as I mentioned, the loop string hadron dynamics is a manifestly gauge invariant dynamics. So the simulated system that we are considering is the loop string hadron Hamiltonian. This is a manifestly gauge invariant, and the simulating system that we are considering is the system of ultra-cooled fermions trapped in optical lattices. Now note that I have only said ultra-cooled fermions. Why is that? Because the loop string hadron in one dimension, the dynamics is actually the dynamics of the fermions, because it's the dynamics of strings. Now because in 1D you don't have really the dynamics of loops. Loops are always like remain as a background or a background flux, or it is governed by the open boundary condition. Now, since this is a dynamics of fermions or dynamics of strings, the strings in the loop string hadron picture are identified as the fermionic quantum numbers, the incoming and outgoing string quantum numbers. Now, this incoming and outgoing strings, those are not really only fermion, but they are gauge invariant objects constructed out of bosons and fermions together. But by statistics, they behave as fermions. So only a system of ultra-cooled fermions is actually being able to simulate the dynamics of the gauge SU2 gauge theory in one dimensions. And as I mentioned, this is we are in loop string hadron. Whatever you are doing in one dimension will actually remain useful in higher dimension as well. So this is true for this picture as well. And this particular simulation scheme that we have proposed, I will not go detail into the simulation scheme, but this is actually gives the dynamics in the weak and intermediate coupling regime of the gauge theory. That is when the Hamiltonian is in the loop string hadron basis or in the strong coupling basis is less diagonal. So it's important. And the proposal that we have, the experimental proposal that we have proposed, this is actually in line with this particular experiment that has been performed recently. And we have actually calculated the quantities, the dynamics, using the experimentally tuned parameters that has been used in this actual experiments. So what are the kind of dynamics that we are looking at? We have considered staggered site. The staggered site is simulated by an alternate potential of optical lattice. Now here, if you see, there is a red and green dots. Those depicts two different types of atoms trapped into these optical lattices, and we tune the parameters of the experiment to match that to the gauge theory, such that this particular state where the atoms are trapped into alternate sites is equivalent to the strong coupling vacuum of the staggered fermionic system. And then one fermion hopping from one to another gives rise to this particular state, the string state on your lattice. And then eventually this dynamics occurs and you get the actual string dynamics that is happening on your lattice. And this is the cartoon picture of a string breaking event. Like this is a particular string present on your lattice. It is identified with this particular configurations on the cold atom system, and then with the eventual hopping of the atoms, one ends up with this kind of one string state breaking into two string states on the lattice. Now with the using the tuning the parameters suitably for lattice gauge for the cold atom systems, we have actually been able to address a wide range of coupling parameters, where this the x0 parameter is 1 over g square a square for the lattice gauge theory. And we could see that for different values of coupling, we get a very good agreement with the spectrum as well as dynamics of the ionic Hubbard model that we are considering, that consists of fermionic atoms trapped into optical lattices, to that of the full gauge theory, that is the SU2 gauge theory on that lattice. Okay, now in the last few minutes, I will only talk about other efforts. These are so far the efforts that I talked about is based on the loop string hadron approach that I have been working on, and there are other parallel efforts as well that is already recently searching towards the goal towards quantum simulation. So this is one of that. This is actually the very first digital implementation of a non-abelian gauge theory on actual IBM quantum computer. This is the work done by Jesse Stryker, Martin Savage, and Natalie Clough from IMT. And they have actually considered a simpler configuration because that was doable. The quantum algorithm was plausible. So they considered an array of plaquettes in one dimension. So effectively, this is a one-dimensional theory, but they could engineer the plaquette interaction and found the trautorization for that. And they obtained the quantum circuit, they implemented it on the IBM quantum computer and obtained results. However, the scheme is not particularly scalable. So in their actual computation within the available resources, they could only do up to 2 plaquette systems. So it's just a system of 2 plaquettes sitting side by side. And this is not a scalable scheme. So one needs to look further to find other proposals as well, or other implementations as well. This is another recent work where this was the first implementation of SU2 hadrons on a quantum computer. Okay, this previous one that I told, this is for pure gauge theory, because in the Hamiltonian, there's no fermion, just the gauge field, just the plaquette term, and consists of 2 adjacent plaquettes. Instead, in this particular work, they considered the one-dimensional system. And as I mentioned, that one-dimensional systems are easy to analyze because there you can solve the Gauss law constraints and end up with a purely fermionic system. And you can see the dynamics of hadrons. So this is the same thing that they have done here using the variational quantum eigensolver on an actual quantum computer, and they have obtained the results. However, the fault is that this scheme is very specific to one dimension, and this cannot be generalized or utilized in higher dimensions. But still, this is also a very first effort towards quantum simulating hadrons on real systems. There was an alternate proposal very recently where I'm not very sure about the detail. I'm not very a good person to ask about the detail of this particular program, particular technique. But what they do, they work with something called D-wave annealer, that is alternate for gate-based quantum computing. But the thing is that in the present days of quantum computing, which is called that NISQ era, that is very noisy intermediate scale quantum regime, now all the quantum gates that one obtains for actual implementation, those are very faulty. The level of noise is very high. On contrary, with this using this quantum annealer, they found a very precise data. Here you can see that all these data points are actually obtained from the actual D-wave quantum annealer, and whereas this blue and this solid and dotted lines are obtained classically using the simulated classically, and you see a very good agreement with the classical data. So the noise level is really low using quantum annealer. So this may open up a complete new direction for, or maybe actually useful to perform quantum computing for abelian and non-abelian gauge theories. And I must mention that the most promising recent effort towards quantum computing, towards this particular goal that I'm discussing, is actually putting a SU3 gauge theory on a quantum computer. That has been done by Natalie Martin-Savage and Antony in recent past, where that has actually built, as the title of the paper depicts, it's a trailhead for quantum simulation of SU3 gauge theory. And the importance of this particular work is they considered a local multiplet basis that is very similar to the angular momentum basis that we use for SU2 gauge theory as well. So what they have done, they have also considered the simplest possible thing. It considered pure gauge theory, and it's only placket interaction, and the global state consists of just two adjacent plackets. However, the state that they considered, these are local states. Like at each corner of this placket, they consider a state characterized by the representation sitting on this link, and this link, such as this. And the corner operator of the placket acts on these three states and gives a whole set of states. And in that way, the full matrix element of the placket for a SU3 gauge theory is written in terms of these matrices. These are called R matrices by them, and this gives the full placket. Now, this is very similar to what can be done, or what has been done for a SU2 gauge theory in angular momentum representation, and using local basis. I mean, not using a rigid rotor on the link, but breaking the rigid rotor into a left rotor and a right rotor part. Those can be connected by the abelian Gauss-Lie constraint. Now,
excuse me, you have a little less than 5 minutes.
Yeah, sure. I by that. Okay. So they have done it for SU3, but from our experience, we know that this loop string hadron formalism has significant benefit over the angular momentum for formalism. So we hope the same to be true for SU3 case as well. So as I mentioned, this is the summary of my talk. We have observed that quantum computation or simulation of lattice gauge theory demands for convenient frameworks and bases, while the original Kogut-Susskind formalism, going beyond Schwinger model, is extremely difficult. That is why there has not been many such attempts. The loop string hadron formalism has many advantages. It takes care of most of the complications. It's exactly equivalent, it produces the same spectrum as the original Hamiltonian given by Kogut and Susskind, and somehow it transforms all the complications of SU2 lattice gauge theory to the level of that for a Schwinger model, that is the abelian constraint only in one dimension. So, and we have seen some immediate applications of loop string hadron both in analog and digital simulation, and we have seen several advantages, and many works are in progress currently to analyze, to proceed in both the directions. So getting the insight from the previous work, like for this SU3, it seems that loop string hadron formalism for SU3 in 3+1 dimension could be actually useful for perform actual quantum computing for QCD. So that is the most prominent future research goal that I could see. Okay, these are my set of collaborators. Thank you very much for your attention.
Yeah, thank you, Indra, actually, for this very nice talk, really. Let's see if there are any questions. So if you have a question, please raise your hand or just speak up. Okay, since I don't see any right now, I actually have a ton of questions, so let me start, let me start by asking my first one here. One of the things I wanted to ask, so in this loop string hadron formalism, right? So you mentioned that you kind of have the abelianization of constraint, and you kind of walked us through this one example with the, where you have to count the fluxes on each side. But I didn't really get how the abelianization takes place. So
okay. So
I can see how everything makes sense that you said for U1 gauge theory, but I didn't really understand where so to say the
okay. Let me. I have some backup slides. Let me see if I have some material for that. Okay. Yes. So if this is the fundamental, the basic constituents of the loop string hadron. So for the abelian constraint, forget the string and hadron part, only the loop part, that is the prepotential formalism. What this formalism does is you have the variables of the theory are the left electric field, right electric field, and the link operator.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this formalism breaks the link operator into a left part and a right part. So it's a left matrix and a right matrix. And everything is now written in terms of a pair of Schwinger boson doublets sitting at each side. So this left electric field, left link operator, that can be reconstructed just as given the expression is given here, right? Yeah, the expression is given here. In terms of these two oscillators, and similarly, the right things are created by these terms of right oscillators. So you forget about the middle part, all those old variables. What you now have is a set of oscillators residing at each lattice side. So this is a complete local picture. Now you have the constraint on the gauge theory that says that the left and right Casimirs are the same. That basically gives you a rigid rotor on your link. This constraint, when you use this particular form of this generators constructed out of Schwinger bosons, this ends up with the constraint where this total number of left oscillators is same as total number of right oscillators. Now this is an abelian constraint that is there for each link.
Okay, I see.
This is particularly that constraint. Now, in the next step, when we write everything in terms of loop string hadron quantum numbers, now these are not manifestly gauge invariant quantum numbers. When we construct the loop string hadron variables, there also it comes as an algebraic relation among this NL, NI, those quantum numbers per side. But that constraint is an abelian constraint because the constraint is basically the same. It's counting the number of oscillators at both ends of the link and equating them. That gives you the continuity of flux, be you in any dimension, whether the link is in one direction or two direction or anywhere.
Okay, I see. Thanks. Let's see. Are there other questions? Yeah, I think Sayantan has one.
Hi, Indrakshi. Thanks for this very nice talk. So I had a question. So suppose you have these oscillators. So is it, so how do you calculate the spectrum? So is it like the action of these creation and annihilation operator on the states, or?
I'm telling you, I think I have the Hamiltonian. Yeah. So this is the Hamiltonian that we finally write. See, the Hamiltonian is a gauge invariant quantity. Hamiltonian commutes with the Gauss law. So we have the loop string hadron degrees of freedom. Now we write the Hamiltonian in terms of those loop string hadron quantum numbers. So in that basis, say the electric part of the Hamiltonian or the mass part of the Hamiltonian is diagonal. So these are given in terms of some number operators written in the loop string hadron basis. So this is the electric part of the Hamiltonian, all number operators, and there is magnetic part of the Hamiltonian, that is the number operator. Now the interaction or the matter gauge interaction, the hopping term, that basically changes this loop string hadron quantum numbers by ±1 units. So there we construct a set of ladder operators that increases or decreases the NL, NI, NO quantum numbers, and we write the interaction part of the Hamiltonian in terms of those ladder operators. Those are basically ends of string creation or annihilation. Those are again rewritten in terms of these ladder operators, this lambda and chi. This chi I and chi O are ladder operators for Ni and No, and lambda is ladder operator for NL. So here you write a operator, and then you can write it in the matrix form. You can do the exact diagonalization if you want, or use any other scheme to solve this Hamiltonian to find the spectrum.
Yeah, so if I understand correctly, then you get the entire spectrum from here.
Yeah.
And are these the basis states of your actual quantum Hamiltonian?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so then if I do suppose say I do finite density QCD, then I will not have any sign problem because I know the basis, then I can do the entire calculation in that.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay, and another question I had is how difficult is to go is to extend this formalism from SU2 to SU3?
Yeah, that's presently work is going on. The prepotential formalism for SU3 is already there. That was actually my PhD thesis. Now this prepotential formalism, the primary stage of prepotential formalism is there, but writing the Hamiltonian in this kind of suitable form is currently in progress. There are many complications from going to SU2 to SU3. Part of those are actually solved in my PhD thesis, but to complete the formalism, many more works needs to be done, and as we are currently working in that direction.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, great. I think Yuta has another question. Yuta?
Hi. Yeah, thank you for a very nice talk. I have a question on the oracle checking the Gauss's law.
Mm-hmm.
Should I think of this as error detection or error correction?
This is the error detection.
Oh, okay. So is there any understanding from a viewpoint of error correction? Like, so for example, threshold error rate or some other property? Yeah.
So the thing is that thinking is that present day quantum gates will be noisy. So even if you prepare a state that is initially gauge invariant and you evolve your system under the Hamiltonian implemented by a set of quantum gates, then it is highly likely that your system, the final state that you obtain by acting on the Hamiltonian, will no longer be a gauge invariant state. So from the error correction perspective, it is important to check whether this state is satisfying Gauss law or not. If it is not satisfying, then you'll have to discard the state. So this is a step towards error correction in that sense.
Okay, I see. Thank you.
Let's see, we still have time for more questions. Are there other questions? Well, maybe I'll ask another one. So towards the end, you mentioned some work that's been done on annealers, right? Mm-hmm. So I mean, of course, annealers are, they have much more gates already and much more qubits already and so forth. So I'm wondering when you're thinking about putting things on an annealer, do you have to do you have to change your strategy in terms of digitizing the theory, or? I mean, do you need sort of a completely different way to think about, or could you take a formalism and try to port it to an annealer also? I don't think so, because in the paper, as far as I understand, they do the same kind of calculation that, like, considering the matrix elements and all, everything is same. Just the hardware is different. So just you will have to put this thing in a different hardware, and how that works, that can be a black box. The company, they are collaborating with that particular company, and they are providing this facility. So I have not much insight about the detail of how it works. Yeah, okay. Yeah, but that's, I mean, that sounds exciting. Okay. I don't see any other questions right now. Last chance.
Maybe I should stop sharing.
Yeah, so I would say then let's thank you again for really this wonderful talk.